Live on YouTube, the mic, that might help.
Good morning, you guys. Why don't Dove and Sharon, why don't you start? I'll go third.
Okay, I can go. You want me to go, Dub, or I don't,
Yes.
it doesn't.
Please do, please.
Good morning, good morning. Good morning. You know, there was somebody that sent me something on rules for decision, and it was the most beautiful video, the way it was done. Because when you do the rules for decision, Jesus is pretty much telling us that if we remember not to do anything by ourselves, and that means with the separate selves program, we will, have much more peace if we just rely on the Holy Spirit, right? If we just ask in the moments that we don't know. Because the truth is that God is the only thing that's here. I'm imagining that I'm Sharon. I'm imagining that I'm in the world. I have no cause for anger or for fear, for you surround me, and in every need that I perceive, your grace suffices me. Grace is everywhere. Grace is in everything I see. Why? Because grace is in my mind. Deep within is the divine fire of love. And when it comes through all of us, the beings that are on this process, on this path, it's just an allowing of letting go and slowing down. For me now, my guidance is to become patient. Patience is very, very important for a teacher of God. Patience is something that this mind had a hard time with. It wasn't so much reacting to others as it was just like having an assignment and having the teacher tell this mind to do a certain thing. And the impatience, because this brain that this mind has is an ADHD brain. So when it would say slow down, well, that's kind of impossible for an ADHD brain. It's got to be right mind that slows down. It's got to be right mind that takes the lead. And how does it take the lead? By the willingness to know that's all there is. If there's nothing here but love, then there's no problem. And today I want to confess to the addiction I have to the ego. This morning when I got up, I thought about eating certain foods. And what I've been doing a lot now is intermittent fasting for the body because I've been sick again. And, the virus seemed to take another form, which might happen to this mind when I, drop this body. I might take another form, I might dissolve. This is all mystery. But what isn't a mystery? What isn't a mystery? Love. Love is all there is. Love is the only thing that's real. But it's not love like special love. It's love of spirit, of God, of equality. It's what Karen always says, only equals can be at peace. So my process, and we are getting closer to the beginning of the new year, and starting over is always fun, especially in the beginning of these beautiful lessons of A Course in Miracles. They are, in the end, everything we give all the meaning it has for all of us. Without an interpreter, what would we have but just grace, right? So, Ken has this in his book. I have no cause for anger or for fear. Well, if I think I'm a person, I certainly do. But if I know that I've never left heaven, then there's no reason. And sometimes, the willingness just to say to spirit, I'm willing to see this differently. will bring you home into the presence of God. And this is a reflection of what is to come, reflection of heaven. You know, question comes up in mind, well, was it was it always that way? Like, well, you know, was I always in God and then I came in a world? I don't know. Because what I am is the extension of God. So why would it matter? In fact, all questions are really questions for the ego. And I'm not anti-ego because the ego is a helper, but it's a troublemaker too. And that's the problem, because there's nothing outside of me. So how could I have fear even if I'm not imagining it? Everything's a blessing here. If we realize, if this mind will just take it as a gift. If I realize that the smallest thing, like getting in the dream out of the bed in the morning and walking, is for gratitude. Opening my eyes is for gratitude. Mind got upset in Sharon because I was getting sick again and it was making up more stories, one on top of another. And you know what? I was believing them. I had to tell you, I have chills that were like, I was shaking and I'm like, how can you shake if you have no fever? But you see, the ego wants an answer. How about if I tell you yesterday, I went to the doctor and she said there's no answer. COVID is mysterious. So not only is the world mysterious, but COVID's mysterious. So what do I do? Turn in within to spirit and say you're perfectly cared for as spirit. What happens to the body eventually is none of my business. I think a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. But grace is my sufficiency. That's all I ever needed. And all the stories are for 2024. I just want a year of dissolving stories. And with that, I'll turn it over to my friend Dov Fishman. Thank you.
That was a wonderful opening, Sharon. Thank you so much. Very clear. I was listening to you when you said, I'm not anti-ego. You know, it's okay, but I think you said it sometimes it's like a pain or it bothers. And what came up for me when you said that is that it's a thought system that we made up. We actually made up a belief system for survival. And the ego does that very well. Ego knows how to survive. The only thing is, as today's lesson says, lesson number, what is it? Lesson number 348. It says, your grace suffices. And the word suffices is also found in lesson 168, which is the one that says, your grace is given me, I claim it now. So 168 and 169 is all about grace. 168, I claim it, you got to claim it. And the way you claim it is you have no fear. You accept what is. So acceptance is the way that we recognize that God's grace suffices. No matter what happens, whether it's COVID, no matter what it is, I accept it the way it is. That's when I went through my bout of cancer. It was my willingness to say, okay, this is what I got. I accept it. And whatever it is that we do, I accept it. So the chemo treatments, which lasted 2 months, and it was over in 2 months because as the oncologist at Mount Sinai said, you know, if you resist treatment, it's very difficult. But when you're open to it and you accept it, well, yeah, it's, you know, it's God's grace that everything happens perfectly, instead of saying, oh my God, what's going to happen to me now? You're claiming it, you're accepting it, you're saying, I am as God created me, and his love is forever. He's always accessible, but I must be open to it. And that's why open-mindedness is the 10th and last characteristics of God's teachers, because open-mindedness basically says, I've developed trust. Trust in what? Trust in I am as God created me, perfect, whole, complete. Nothing is missing. And in that wholeness, everything heals perfectly, because nothing was ever unhealed other than my belief in it. It's the only thing that has to be healed is our thought system, our belief system that says I'm a body, and bodies die, and none of that is true. We made it all up as a substitute for first of all trying to hide from God, which obviously is resistance. So it's my resistance that causes the pain. And if I identify with a body, which is idolatry, I love bodies. I think I'm a body. I don't want this body to get sick and die. Once I do that, I'm exchanging the love of God for idols. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Lorri Coburn.
Thanks, Dove. This lesson 348, is one that I used to say to myself as I would go to sleep at night. 346 and 348. And they comforted me a lot. And 346 is the peace of God envelops me, and I forget all things except his love, something to that effect. And so when my mind was all crazy and anxious and everything, when I would say, I forget all things except God's love, and the peace of God envelops me. I remember falling asleep at night when my grandmother was dying. I couldn't sleep. I was all uptight. I was all, upset. And I envisioned all this light, these angels and light and warmth all around me. And that's the way I fell asleep. And I've done that since, and it's very comforting. So I'm just going to read this whole lesson. Lesson 348. I have no cause for anger or for fear, for you surround me. And in every need that I perceive, your grace suffices me. Father, let me remember you are here and I am not alone. Surrounding me is everlasting love. I have no cause for anything except the perfect peace and joy I share with you. What need have I for anger or for fear? Surrounding me is perfect safety. Can I be afraid when your eternal promise goes with me? Surrounding me is perfect sinlessness. What can I fear when you created me in holiness as perfect as your own? God's grace suffices us in everything that he would have us do, and only that we choose to be our will as well as his. And I would say this lesson's a great one for people who still think they're people, because when we get to the place of knowing that we are part and parcel of God and there's no separation, this will be automatic. But it's wonderful because I don't know too many people who don't still have ego or can fall back into ego. I don't know if there's a body alive on this planet that doesn't still have ego. I don't know if we would stay around if all ego was gone. So this lesson is so comforting, and I think I'm going to send it to a client of mine, because he keeps, in our sessions, he can get right to the place of truth. We forgive the past, we forgive all this stuff, but the habit of the ego to think that it is separate and alone is so incredibly strong. And I think that's one of the things I've been noticing in the last couple months is how much ego has been dropped in this dream character and how much ego still pops up. It's like, wow, there's another one. There's another ego belief or thought or attachment. And as each one goes, of course, we are more peaceful and more free. And that's our only peace and freedom. I was looking at a book the other day. We had a book exchange in my Course in Miracles group's Christmas party. And I got this book on happiness The Pursuit of Happiness. And it was based on the psychological work of William Glasser. And he has done very important work in the ego world in terms of helping people to realize that happiness is a choice and that they can arrange things to maximize their happiness instead of being victims. And just reading the back cover, it was talking about happiness for people being based on 4 things: love, fun, freedom, and I forget what the last one was. Love, power, fun, and freedom. Oh yeah, love, power, fun, and freedom. And I thought of those in terms of, if you're awake and you know that you're not a person, the only love comes from knowing that you are God, or that you're awake, or that you're the Christ. The only power comes from the same thing. All pleasure, fun, comes only from forgiving this world and doing God's will, which is to be awake, to accept atonement, to know that we are the holy child of God. And that's the only freedom as well. So I looked at those and said, these are great for people who think they're egos, because I had to do that. When I thought I was Lorri, I had to maximize my life in the ways where I balanced those love, power, fun, and freedom, and didn't let anything get in my way. And I actually did a pretty good job of that. And then as I started realizing, wait, this is all a dream, and certain things happened that no matter what you do to maximize your ego life, you can't control the dream. You can't control anything. People around you die. And those were the lessons for me, that the people around me that were dying, that were close to me, it's like, I can't control that. So I better wake up and let go of thinking that I can balance my life in these ways. And I still do those things on a practical level. I still schedule my day in a way that is balanced and easy. And I don't put myself in situations where I get behind the 8 ball if I can help it. But I still know that, just like what Sharon was referencing of rules for decision, I do that every day. And I will ask, what would you have me do now? And I don't get out of bed until I say, what kind of day do I want to have? And today it was, I want to see only love, or a call for love, and to feel that my mind is still and my mind holds only what I think with God. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Sharon.
Beautiful. It's true that, when we're doing this work, it's a gradual unfolding of these thought forms that are just like slowly but surely just dissolving and going home. I wanted to share some things that I was looking at. I tend to, I'm on Facebook only for, the truth. I actually don't have friends that aren't on the path anymore, because when all this happened a couple years ago, I was like, okay, I like Facebook because I like to see what certain people post on the Course in Miracles. And, I am discerning who I want to take, to take any of the things that they share, because there's some real jewels that, Keith Kavanaugh puts on there. We know if we go on in Facebook, NTI and ACIM, they have great things. And these are the kinds of things that I feed myself when I need food, because the Word of God is food. But Snook shared this, and I thought it was really good to see what comes through me. Nook Sanchez shared this. It is necessary to begin to discern the ego's thinking from the thoughts we share with God. The thoughts we think with God are more likely to be experienced as felt states rather than as an intellectual ideas. Thoughts are states of inner peace, spacious stillness, absolute certainty, incorruptible and shared sinlessness, inner joy, uncontainable, gratitude, infinite safety and security, joyful inspiration, overwhelming desire to extend our guiltless perception with others, to forgive, boundless expressions of changeless love, abundant miracles, including physical healing. These are just a few examples of our felt states as we begin to identify only with the thoughts we share with God as our holy self. If your thoughts contain any of the followings, then they are not the thoughts you think with God, and therefore are not your thoughts. They are the ego's thoughts that do not belong to you. They include guilt, fear, unworthiness, self-blame, self-doubt, shame, blame, judgment, anger, loss, independent concerns about the body, thoughts about the past or future. These represent attack thoughts and must be given to the Holy Spirit to be purified. So if I have like a grievance about anything in the world, immediately at this point, I hand it over. And trying to understand any of this is a big problem. See, the understanding is what we really are. But to understand and try and say, well, what does that mean? Well, that's falling down the rabbit hole once again, because and it's insidious when the ego wants to know, right? Because the ego really does go on this path with us. And it really does want to wake up, and it can't because it's not there. But we think it's there, right? So I did like that, because the thoughts of God, I only think the thoughts of God. I often would catch my mind thinking, you don't think thoughts with God. God is a state of mind. And then I saw this, and I thought it was just very helpful for me. And then there was another thing, when we look at even that the script is written, it's really just the moment that this happened, where we had one thought, a couple thoughts, what if it would be different? And out came a world. Now, I question whether or not we really had that, because this is all a movie. Even the awakening is part of the movie, right? Like I'm talking, but what's coming through me is not an individual Sharon. It's almost like there's a song Bette Midler sings, "In the Distance." We are just vessels for the divine. And that's exactly what this is. It's absolutely a symphony of love, a love soup, of just love everywhere. And everything is touched by this grace. And how grateful I am for this process. And as everyone says, it's simple, but not easy. And that is true. Because the majority of the world that we're in isn't thinking the thoughts that we are, basically. When I say we all think thoughts. They all come in our mind. But the idea that this mind is so not interested in what's going on in the world is actually a shock. But the promises A Course in Miracles gives us is that everything's taken care of. So when I would constantly feel like I wasn't making progress, that was just the ego. How could I know what progress is? When Jesus says your greatest advances are your greatest retreats, you're like, what? Oh God, that can't be. You're not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to. Really, there's no rules in waking up. And there's only one of us waking up. It's not a big deal. It's not something that we have to work for, but we can join in love. And what's happened to my mind now is the wisdom that I love. So I love wisdom. I can listen to wisdom all the time. And what is wisdom? Well, it really is silence. And that's really, and to be quite honest, that's the part of this mind that needs practice. To just do nothing, to just be the stillness, to not be this character that talks so much and really has all these ideas. And why would, if I'm just in heaven dreaming, I care if somebody hurt me? Now, this has taken years to really get, but why would that matter? That he that's out there isn't really there. I'm imagining the dream of separateness. And honestly, at this point, I don't like it. In fact, the fact that we're all the extension of God means that there's nothing to do anymore. Just be. The ego's not going to like it, because the ego really, really believes it's real. you know, I would forget all things except your love. I would abide in you. This is a prayer that we make to the Holy Spirit. And know no laws except your law of love. And that law of love is what I give. I can only give to myself. And I would find the peace which you created for your son, forgetting all the foolish toys I made as I behold your glory and my own. These foolish toys, as we have seen elsewhere, are the ego's thoughts of sin and attack. Any attack is attack. And I love what Lorri shared about that she does that every day. I don't. And I'm starting to realize that I got a message that I want to now. What is there to do without asking the right mind what I should do? Otherwise, I'm just doing patterns, pattern after pattern after pattern. And the other thing is, I often thought that opinions mattered. I really did. Well, he thinks like I do, so therefore I like him. That is the ego. Who cares what anyone thinks? The thinking mind is making this up. I'm in God, dreaming of this fun character, Sharon, and I'm sitting here this morning saying, the only thing I can have right now is gratitude. Gratitude is what we need, right? Let go of fear and come in with patience. You know, the body is usually moved a lot by triggers of the ego, right? Because the ego is the body. And so lots of times, you know, I was sensing covering the heart. You don't want to do that if you can help it, because there are layers underneath of this. That's why the achieving of truth is I need do nothing, because the layers will come as long as I do not give my attention to the thoughts. What if I do? So I do. Anyway, I want to say one more thing that was really beautiful. That Power of Eight with Amy Anderson was without a doubt, it blew me away. It was so magnificent. And then I also went on to Mark Anthony. I don't know him real well at all. I know he's friendly with Aaron, and I did a meditation thing with him. He is channeling, you know, light beings, and that was just interesting. I don't know what my opinion really was, because, you know, again, I try to just not have good or bad, because if I think somebody's a good teacher, then I'm bound to think someone's a bad teacher. So I look for the gratitude in the moment because I want sameness. This whole dream is about making the dream equal. Equal. If somebody's a jerk, there's an equal jerk out there. And that would be me if I see a jerk out there. Anyway, over to you, Doug. Thanks.
Well, Sharon, that was superb teaching. Truly, I mean that was. I know you sometimes make others like that. They're great teachers. That was as superb as any teacher of A Course in Miracles could ever share. That was so right on. And I noticed you mentioned equality as you closed out your homily. And I was just about to talk about equality. So everything is always in perfect synchronicity, even though we sometimes think that it's not. But I assure you that it is always perfect. So this is what Jesus says. I put it in the room as well, from text chapter 8, section 4, paragraph 6. Sentences 8 and 9, he says, God's sons are equal in will, all being the will of their Father. So there's only one will. We all have the same will. And goes on to say, this is the only lesson I came to teach. Can you imagine that? This is the only, whenever you use the word only, or last, or purpose. He's asking you to really listen. This is the only lesson I came to teach. God's will is perfect, and we are equal, sharing the same will. Now, what is the will of God? Well, you go to lesson 101, one of my favorite lessons. God's will is perfect happiness for all, included the Son and the Father together as one. So if it was just God's will and not my will, I could say, well, I got to do something to catch up because I want to be happy too. And happiness seems to be something, I heard you mention the book by called The Pursuit of Happiness. I always think of it was Will Smith who actually, him and his daughter starred in a movie called The Pursuit of Happiness, and he reminded his daughter in the middle of the movie, he said, remember, they're telling you to pursue happiness. And the Course is saying, no, happiness is not to be pursued at all. It's not to be pursued. That's your will, is to be perfectly happy. God's will for me is perfect happiness, lesson 101 and lesson 102. And I share God's will for my happiness. It's the same will. There's only one will. There's only one mind. There's only one. We're not talking about two. We're talking about one. And I don't have to do anything, exactly as Sharon said. I need do nothing will achieve more than all your doings ever, because doings really comes from the belief that I need do something in order to finally be happy or have something that I want. No, you already have everything. That's what the grace of God is all about. We, as today's lesson 448, your grace suffices me. I get angry or afraid because I think that I don't have what it takes in order to be what I am. And that's the upside down thinking of the ego thought system that we made up. We made it all up as a substitute. And as you get towards the end of the lessons, he uses idolatry and idols a lot more than at the beginning. So idols are anything in this world that you think is that you make as a substitute for the love of God. The body is the most obvious idol. I am a body. No, I'm sorry, you're not a body. I got to go out and do something. I got to make something. I got to get something. These are all idols, and these idols are worthless, have no value to you whatsoever. That's my birthday lesson 133. I will not value what's valueless. What's valuable belongs to me. And that's a very practical lesson 133. Because it tells you that you value things of this world, and they're all idols. Not one thing that begins in time and ends in time has any value to you, the eternal Son of God. And we also value what seems to be like somebody else has something that I don't have, or maybe I know something that others don't know. Whatever that is, that's the ego saying, oh, they're special, you're not, or I'm special, you're not. And those are just pure forms of idolatry. So this world is just an idol to kind of substitute for the real thing. And what is the real thing? It's the love of God that is eternal, that is forever. And whenever we identify with an idol, which begins in time and ends in time, and I don't care if you're talking about your body or your money or your house or your family, or none of that really means anything, because what's real cannot be taken away. What's real cannot be destroyed. What's unreal doesn't even exist. Herein lies the peace of God. And with that, I'll turn it back on. Over to you, Lorri.
Thanks, Dove. And I agree with what you said about what Sharon said about, I don't even try to assess whether a course teacher is a good teacher or a bad teacher, because if I label somebody a good teacher, then I'm going to label another one a bad teacher. That hit me right between the eyes when you said that, Sharon. That was perfect. I never thought of it that way. And I do tend to judge course teachers. And I still notice how much ego there is in me around being a course teacher. And I just, it comes up and I see it and I just forgive it and let it go and say, yeah, you think you're Lorri, who wants to be a course teacher, who wants to be respected and better known or whatever, but I don't do anything to do that. I've never marketed or pushed anything or teachings, but even with that, letting it all go, I still feel the comparison and the jealousy and all that ego stuff. And all I can do is keep forgiving it because it's all stupid. So thank you for that, Sharon. Not labeling anyone a good teacher or a bad teacher, having no judgments at all. And also another thing that you taught me this morning was when you said you were sick again, I have a feeling, and I don't know if this is true, but I have so many friends who have gotten the COVID boosters, all the boosters, and they get COVID and other people don't, and they get it really bad. And I don't trust those boosters, but of course that's the Lorri ego opinion. It could be completely false. I may just be seeing witnesses to my ego belief, because I was talking with my sister's sister-in-law, and I said, I just see people who have gotten the vaccines, they're the ones getting sick. And she goes, well, I see just the opposite. I see the people that haven't gotten the vaccines and they're the ones getting sick. And I thought, yeah, there you go. The ego just wants witnesses to its opinions. And you were talking about opinions, and how, well, we know opinions are of the ego and they mean nothing. So when you brought that up, I thought, wait a minute, that's just an ego opinion. And then I started saying, "God, Sharon, I feel so bad that you're so sick, and I don't want you to be sick." And then I thought, wait a minute, you're attacking Sharon. Sharon's not Sharon. If I see you as anything other than the Christ, I have attacked you. So I stopped and I said to myself, to you, joining in your mind of, Sharon, you are the Christ. You are whole. You are complete. I join my mind with your mind. And as you know, you're not this body that's sick, and the body is nothing. And so it's easier said than done. For me, things with the body really bother me. They scare me. I can't deal with them. And that's why, in avoiding not wanting to make you special, Lynn, but I have so much respect for you with all the stuff you've gone through with your body. And you too, Sharon. You've gone through so much with your body that when that happens to me and I get sick, I immediately go to, I hate this effing world. I want out of here. I do not do well with bodily issues. And thankfully, to this point, I haven't had very many. And the ones that I've had have been taken care of relatively easily. I have had migraines forever, but I have good medicine for them. And I am so grateful. So I notice that, again, I work constantly to not judge the body and hate the world, forgiving that. And I would say it's 10-20% of what it used to be. So that's really good. But I still have it. Like the other day, I got a colonoscopy. And the irony of it was, I thought my last colonoscopy, they said you had polyps again and you need to come back in 3 years. Well, I showed because I've had two. The first one I had polyps. They said come back in 3 years instead of 5 because of the polyps. So I thought the last one said the same thing. I showed the results to the doctor. He goes, this says you didn't have any polyps and you didn't have to come back for 5 years. And I went, oh my gosh, here I am going through that horrible, icky thing of that colonoscopy prep, and I didn't have to do it. But I was really glad. I was like, well, I'm here now, and it came back all clear. So that's two of them in the last 6 years coming back all clear. And that makes me very happy. And because I took a girlfriend to a colonoscopy this past summer, and she had colon cancer. And then I took her to the hospital for her colon cancer surgery. And another friend that I just stayed with, she had colon cancer and had surgery years ago. And Kirstie Alley died of it this year. And my grandfather died of colon cancer. So that's making the world real. It's making bodies real. But the loving thing for me to do was just get it and just let it go. Well, for anyone out there who's getting it, there is a new thing. This was such a blessing. And talk about, spirit taking care of you, even though it's form and it's just simple stuff. I was telling my doctor, I said, oh, the worst thing about the colonoscopy is that prep, trying to get that gallon of stuff down you just want to gag, and I can't, it's so hard to finish it. And it's, oh. And she said, well, she goes, I just had it. And there's this new stuff out there, Clinpick or anyway, it's just these 2 small bottles. And then you don't have to drink quite as much fluids afterward. And, she said, oh, it's only like about $45. Your insurance won't cover it because the other stuff is really cheap. But I said, oh, $45. I'm doing that. And so I ordered it, and I thought this is worth it, so for me not to dread the colonoscopy for the entire month beforehand. So I ended up getting it from my pharmacy, and it was $82. It's like, oh man, $82. It's like, well, I'm still going to get it. That'll be my Christmas present to myself. And it was really wonderful. It was so much easier than the other kind, so much better. And so I was just grateful. So all these little things. So even through this, I feel gratitude, and I feel happy now. And who would have thought I would just feel happy because of this colonoscopy? Because those are so gross. But anyway, we're taken care of. Just like this is, I have no cause for anger or for fear, for you surround me. And in every need that I perceive, your grace suffices me. And not just your grace, because I know Ken Wapnick was fond of saying the Holy Spirit doesn't do anything in form. I always disagreed with that. And in truth, he's correct, because there is no form and there is no world in which the Holy Spirit can do anything. But while we perceive ourselves, in every need that I perceive, when we perceive ourselves as a body in a world, we do get specific answers. And I made a list of, there was at least 10 places in the course where it talks about you will be given answers very specifically, or every specific need you think you have will be met in a form that you can understand. So even in the colonoscopy form that I can understand, I got this better treatment, and it was so nice. And so I'll turn this back over to you, Sharon.
Thank you. Thank you, Lorri, for that. Thank you.
Beautiful, Lorri. It's funny because I have to call out the ego, in this mind. The ego in me does not like being sick. In fact, the ego in me, and there's only one ego, but it really likes to be a victim when I'm sick. However, I'm learning all of the ways that the ego shows itself here in the mind. So I basically, to be quite honest, as a character, I did like being a victim, because that way I'm not responsible, right? But what gave me freedom, what gave me movement of the ego getting out of the way, is to say basically that it's all me. And when I'm responsible for sight, everything begins to fall away. If I fight that thought, because remember, if we could just look at the image in our mind, it's thought basically fighting with thought. And the Holy Self is just sitting here thinking, what are you doing? And all day long, this is going on. So this body mind does have issues when it doesn't, like I watch Dove and Lynn, and I have to say, I'm more like you, Lorri. I am much more like you. I probably would be talking about what they had a lot, because that's what happens, but what I'm learning is every complaint that I have is hurting me. Doesn't hurt anyone out there. So what I've done recently is just put on beautiful, as Ken Wapnick loved classical music is actually like a vitamin if you put it on. Putting on Beethoven, it just brings you into the stillness. And it also, if you watch the way the mind just creeps in, and it's not like it really wants to hurt me, it's that it wants me to know that it's still here. And the only reason that the ego's still here is because that's how I'm moving. And I also have opinions that I have a New Year's resolution. I want to be vigilant for God, period. Because why mess around anymore? But I just had to express the fact that I am a hypochondriac when I was sick. And when I had fibromyalgia, I was in horrible pain with that, with plantar fasciitis. I had all these issues, but I couldn't even, because the pain was very bad too, at least for me. And some of us are more sensitive to pain too. So there's no measurement here, like who does what, but we do learn from each other. And that's why sharing on, a place like Gather is helpful, because we're learning through each other. Maybe there's something I'm learning from Dove that I don't see yet, or from Lorri. Our blind spots are just layers, and we have a lot of layers here. So the vigilance that Jesus is asking for is usually coming with a higher or more advanced student in this process, right? Because the mind does get quiet now. So it's just being responsible, and also always remaining the student. And I learned that from Gloria. Now, I had heard that years ago, but it just has become something that I live with now, because I like learning. I love learning. Cliff and I are doing something now where we bought a book called Breathe, and the guy's name is James Nestor. And he had learned that for the majority of mammals, we're the only ones that do not breathe out of our nose. The nose is a filter. Now, a lot of us can't, maybe for health reasons, but Cliff and I, like, I'm taping my mouth, a couple hours a day, just because the moisture, and why am I coming into that? Because the breath is God. Okay, let's just face it. The breath is everything, loves breath. And so that's what I pay a lot of attention to with breath work and also breathing. But the learning capacity, that we are in a magnificent, magnificent song that's never broken. Not a note in heaven has been missed. You know what that means? That means I imagined that I was this character, and it was so important. And I thought it was. I really did. I mean, but now, the loosening up and the vigilance for God and his kingdom. I mean, the kingdom is my consciousness. So who's responsible? I am. And I have to be very honest. I wasn't always. I liked telling stories. And it's the stories that actually break the flow. The silence is really what I am, what we all are. The stillness of God, right? Let all things be exactly as they are, because they are. Everything else is just a thought. So what am I working for? What is some of the work I want to do for the one day at a time thing, or for the week, is hold myself 100% responsible for even my patience. Because that's one of the 10 characteristics of a teacher of God. And that is probably, for this mind, one of the hardest. Now, some people that aren't patient react and yell at people. I don't do that. But I'm tough on myself. And I want very much to move away and realize that nothing really happened. So why be tough? What is a dream? Smoke and mirrors. That's all it is. And, it's funny because the patience that I require now is to really believe that going slow is the only way. Sometimes as an art student, I would rush things, and that was something that my brain did on its own. We want to just relax and slow down. It's all about that. Infinite patience is what brings us infinite results. What that really means is that the slower we go, the more we see that we don't miss anything. Nobody wants to miss anything. What does that mean? Well, just the stillness. I mean, just look around and see what it's made. I'm in my family room with a fireplace, and it's made this gorgeous, gorgeous room. This emptiness has done that. We have done that, and it's beautiful. Over to you, Doug, and Lorri too. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Sharon and Lorri. That was great. Yeah, I kind of picked up when you said that Ken Wapnick says that Holy Spirit never does anything in form, and you kind of thought that, well, maybe he is not aware of all the Holy Spirit's capable of doing. And I agree with that, by the way. I agree with that. And I was thinking of for those people who don't know, Lorri has a wonderful Zoom session on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock, which I've been attending for about a year. And we have some very interesting dialogues, conversations. And we're looking at Jack is one of the people in the thing, and I was looking at why we attract people that always want something from us. And after the session was over, it came to me like out of nowhere, people pleasing. Now we all know that David Hoffmeister makes that one of his 2 rules if you ever want to be within a David Hoffmeister community: no people pleasing and no secrets. Now the people pleasing is like, oh, well, I'm going to stop people pleasing. It's not all that easy to stop people pleasing because it's our nature. It's our nature, and I know that the word people pleasing is just a euphemism for trying to make somebody happy. And of course, if Jesus came here, he said, my only purpose for coming here to teach is to teach that we are all the equal sons of God. And I put that up here earlier. God's sons are equal in will, all being the will of their Father. This is the only lesson I came to teach. God's will is perfect. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not brought up as a child in a home. And I was speaking to someone who called me up asking me maybe if I can help her. It seemed like they moved from their home, which was an okay home. Well, they want to move to a place where it costs a lot less. And she said, well, we ought to just go there and just try it out first before we make a decision. And the husband said, no, no, we're going to go and we're going to buy something and we're going to maybe something that's not completely perfect. It's something cheap, and we're going to build it up. We're going to make it new again. And she said, okay. And she said, I only said okay to him because I wanted to make him happy. I wanted to make him happy. Keyword, I'm going to make him happy. Now, I said, you can't make anyone happy. Happy is our natural will. Happiness is what we are. You can't make someone happy. And we started, she said, why do I do that? Why do I do that? And of course, I realized I was talking to myself at the time. There's no accident. This person comes to me and asks me that question. Why do I think I'm making somebody happy by giving them something? So it got down to, I said, I bet that you tried to make your mother happy. She was probably a person who probably was unhappy and you wanted to make her happy. She said, yeah, how did you know that? I said, well, I had the same thing. I had a mother who was always kind of either sad or she was angry at God for taking what she felt that she lost and thought that, and I said, and did your mother blame your father? Says, yeah, how did you know? I said, because I went through the same thing. Uh, uh, the guilt was my father. I was trying to help my father too. I was trying to help my father by making her happy so she wouldn't be angry at my father as well as my angry at God. Does any of that make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. But that's the psychology that we're born with, and that's the lesson that I came here to learn. This is a schoolroom. There's no accident that the people are your mother, your father, the things that they go through. There's no accident they go through that. You ask them to go through that so that you can learn the lesson that you came here to learn. And you have to start somewhere. There's you start with a book or you start with a family or you start with something and you learn lessons. But at the end, you're just looking at it and you got to laugh. I'm doing this to myself. Isn't that the secret of salvation? Is I'm doing this to myself? You got to laugh, really. Over to you, Lorri.
Can I say something real quick here?
Yeah,
Yep.
go ahead.
Excuse me. The whole idea of people pleasing, what we talk about, it's really doing something that I don't want to do or that I judge as unworthy because I want to make another person feel better. And if I'm judging it as an unworthy thing, and if I'm saying I don't like this and I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway, or I feel put upon, or I feel walked on, or whatever it is I think is happening here, if I'm judging what it is that I'm doing as being an unworthy thing, it's not going to help anybody. It's not going to make anybody happy. It's going to piss me off. It's going to piss them off. Eventually, we'll all come to blows over it. And why? Because they asked for something. I judged it as unworthy, and I did it anyway. The whole idea is I need to love them without judgment and not judge what they ask of me. That's what happened with me and my husband and Sandy. Once I stopped judging what he was asking of me and looking at it as something that was an attack, I began to see that it was just love calling for love. And if it was love calling for love, if I answered with anything else, it would just be a disaster. And it was a disaster for months before I finally said yes. And when I said yes, it became joy because I recognized that my salvation was not in keeping my marriage in a situation that was what I approved of. My salvation was to stop judging the whole situation and to just let love be what love is. Anyway, thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Len. It was perfect that you asked for the time because that was a zinger.
Yes, I agree, Lynn. Thanks for that clarification. So it's our time is just about up, so I'll just wrap up and say I'm glad that I've never been too much of a people pleaser. My judgment goes the other way, like hey, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You know, you've got it in you. I'm not doing it for you. But that's a judgment too. And if I'm judging them, but if I just say, you know, hey, you've got it in you, and I'm going to see only the Christ in you, and I'll support you in that, that's not the judgment. So letting go, it's 9:30. And thank you guys. It was great being with you, and see you next week.
Thank you, Lorri, Sharon, Len, thank you so much.